I'll tell you Clipston thing that I remember I dealt with. There was cigarettes stolen from the Brown Cow at Mansfield, and suspicion was put on some works parties that were in, because it was very near Christmas. And I remember there was a builders party in, and so you made enquiries in the pub about had anyone seen anything, and somebody had said they'd seen this lad coming from behind the bar, which he shouldn't have been behind the bar, but they'd only got a nickname. And so I went off duty, and about 2 a.m. in the morning suddenly remembered who this nickname was, and it was a lad from Clipston. So 7 o'clock that morning I rang another policeman and said, I need to go and arrest someone, will you come with us? And so we arrived at this house, knocked on the door, said we needed, I can't remember his name, but we needed to see this particular person, and he come down, and I said, I'm arresting you on suspicion of theft of cigarettes. And his eyes swiveled to under the Christmas tree, where there's all these square packages. So
were they wrapped up? They
were all wrapped up as Christmas presents. So they came with us, and obviously we got the man, we got what was stolen and what have you. And we used to, we would then interview them, and probably, if we thought they committed more offences, we'd ask the magistrates to remand him in police custody so we could interview them longer. And I remember we arranged to do this, and who would go before the magistrates was an inspector or a chief inspector. And he come back and he says, I bailed him. I said, what are you bailed him for? He says, it's Christmas. There was a unmarried mother's home, Gwendolyn Grove House, and sometimes we used to get the forestry commission workers come and say we'd found a camp, and the boy from the relationship had come to see the girlfriend, and instead of they camp in the woods. So sometimes I would get a call and say, we've got so-and-so missing, who's heavily pregnant, and you'd go out in the woods trying to find them. And we did a couple of times. Other times they just come back. But it wasn't criminal or anything. It was, typical day would be getting up. Of course, you were on the phone, on call 24 hours a day, so sometimes you got called in the middle of the night, and other times you didn't. And we used to work what was called split shifts. So I might work 9 till 1, 6 till 10, or 1 till 5, 10 till 2, dependent what I was doing that day. But I had to work so many earlys and so many lates in a month. Not all split shifts, sometimes I worked straight through, which is slightly easier than a split shift because you've got 45 minutes for your lunch. You had an office attached at Clipston, which was nice, and generally you got to know people better. And there were two big things. One was the colliery, and the second one was all the farmers around here. Getting to know them, getting to know the colliery, getting to know what their problems were, and trying to police it as best you could. And I've always liked dealing with crime more than traffic, so I always used to concentrate on on crime more than doing people for traffic offences, although that sometimes you have to do that. The colliery, there was obviously, I think there was about 1,200 people work there. So 1,200 people do generate their own problems, whether it be assault, theft or whatever. And of course, attached to that you've got the miners' welfare, the squinting cat, and then I can remember making a conference point. Do you know what they are?
No.
You would go to where there was a phone.
Yeah.
So if Forest Town Police Station or Mansfield House Police Station wanted me to do something, no radios, the phone would go and you'd say hello and they'd give you the job and off you'd go.
So how would you know to go to the phone?
Because you made 3 points in the morning, 3 points in the afternoon. Over the 8 hours you'd make 6 conference points. So you had to be at those particular places for 10 minutes. Phone boxes, colliery premises, Woods, the slaughterhouse, anywhere really where there was a phone that you could get to. I remember making a point on 6th Avenue at Clipston, outside the other side of the road from the Squinting Cat, and the licensee's wife came across and says, we've got problems in the pub. And it was basically a group of people from Clipston were arguing with some rockers on motorbikes, and the motorbikes were parked outside. So I went over, ushered them all out because it was, I think, virtually closing time, and thought, I've done a good job there, and turned to go back into the pub and found they'd locked the doors behind me. So I'd got a dozen rockers and a dozen lads from Clipston wanting to fight me on my own. So I'd said to the Clipston lads, I said, I know all of you, go home, there's not going to be any trouble. And they did. And then the rockers went, so that solved that problem. I thought I'd done a good job, then turned to go back in the pub and the doors were shut. But of course, with no radios or anything, you've got to look after yourself. You've got to be able to deflate the atmosphere and make sure everybody's as safe as they can be.
Did that come from building a relationship with the community, or?
I think it did. Yeah. Because I'd obviously probably arrested a couple of them in the past, and so if you've dealt with them fairly and squarely, they don't hold any grudges or anything. Hopefully, anyway.
What was your demeanour like?
I think my demeanour underneath was probably in turmoil, but trying to be firm and tell them, you can fight as much as you want, but I know all of you, and I'll come and find you one by one. Yeah, all the time you were on your own, unless the sergeant had come out, but that didn't happen very often. So when I was going around the rural area, it was motorbike and on a push bike round the colliery village. There was a telephone that you picked the phone up and could talk to either Forest Town Police Station or Mansfield House Police Station.
Because it was saying the officer's out.
But if they wanted to see me,
they banged on the door.
They banged on the door,
and I were in there with 2 little kids, and then they'd come round front and they'd bang on window.
Yeah.
And in the end, I put a net curtain up, didn't I? Because they'd see straight in.
Yeah.
And I'd be bathing one of the kids as you did in them days in front of fire.
Yeah.
One of the issues with having a police house in the village is you would you'd have callers at all hours. I can remember one woman coming saying, my husband's beating me up and he's coming down.
Well, you weren't there, were
And
you?
I wasn't there. So Valerie did no more than rang Forest Town Police Station and
Well, she wouldn't go away. She was banging and banging, and I'd got
kids
kids in there.
upstairs. Yeah.
She banged and banged and
So-
screaming, so I let her in, which I shouldn't have done.
And then locked the door.
Got the door, and I got told off from the police station for endangering. You know, you shouldn't have done it. So if she'd have banged any harder on front window, she'd have come through it. It's only single. She was in a mess, weren't she, John?
Yeah.
Really in a mess, weren't she?
And then, of course, the next day she'd come and say, don't want anything doing, you know.
No charges.
No charges. So,
And Uncle Sarge, as we used to call him, because the kids called him Uncle Sarge. Well, Richard did. Robert was a baby. He says, "Don't you open that door anymore, no matter what they do."
Gordon Haywood.
That was it. Lovely big bloke. He'd play cricket on front of Forest Town Police Station with him, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
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 If you could go back now, do you think you would let her in again?
Probably yes, because it's your nature. To hear her like she was, then I'd like to think, with regards to what I've done for 45 years with the kids, it's something, and my work, when I worked, I don't think I could change my mind.
No. The colliery strike of 1972, the NUM struck and the deputies were still going to work, which caused a bit of friction in the village. And about 5 o'clock one morning, about 200 pickets turned up and about 200 policemen. So that was exciting, and we made a way through for the deputies to come through, but they didn't. They turned back at the picket line.
What was the atmosphere like then? Do you remember being there?
I remember being there, and I remember talking to pickets and getting on quite well. But the day the 200 policemen came there, that was...
I can remember standing in the bedroom window with Richard in my arms. Where's my daddy? And there were these parades of policemen, you know. Well, I hadn't got a clue because they all looked the same in an helmet and a uniform. Yeah, walking down the main road.
You've got the management on one side, and the miners on the other, and it was trying to keep the peace, really.
You've got one or two people all over the village, different walks of life, that whispered in your ears about things.
Yeah, things that were going missing.
Or planned happening.
Yeah. So we had a good idea what was going to happen before it happened. Sometimes they surprised you. But the local NUM official, Albert Sparham, he was always very conscious that I've got a family at home, and they all parked on the green at the side of his house. And Albert said, "No, you can't do that. You're waking the kids up." So they had to go up and park near the welfare.
So there was a common respect between you.
Yeah. They knew I'd got a job to do, and that's the way it was, really.